Hey team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement, and I wanted to give you a little breakdown on what it means to be a holistic horse trainer and how we go about looking into the 4 key elements of creating safe horses that want to look after us and that enjoy learning and ask to be ridden. So today we're going to go into those key elements so that you can transfer some of these skills to your horse. So our 4 key skills to holistic horse training is mental relaxation. So we're going to talk about emotional self-regulation, resilience and agility. Cue training, so we use cue training for communication and to open up a language between ourselves and our horses. Conditioning, being able to have a horse that feels good when moving. Movement is dynamic, so if we are drilling 20-meter circles, we are not helping our horse. And your body alignment. This is something that is really important when we are riding. We need to make sure that we're not floppy potatoes on our horse's back, smacking them around in the mouth with the bit. You need to find your balance over a strong, secure lower leg so that you have hands that your horse can trust, so that they seek your hands for communication. So mental relaxation is about developing relaxed focus, getting our horse into a learning brain, learning emotional self-regulation and resilience, and building willingness instead of submission. So what we are looking at here is giving our horses the emotional agility to take themselves out of negative emotional states that lead to difficult behaviors like bucking, rearing, bolting, biting, kicking, into a more positive work ethic and a more positive interaction with us. Some of that is going to be the skills that you need to learn. Some of that is going to be the quality of the relationship with your horse and how you can be a partner that your horse enjoys being around. And part of it is going to be emotional coaching with your horse. So our old school style of training is to start an argument, win the argument. Start the argument, win the argument. Start the argument, win the argument. Start the argument, win the argument. And so over a period of time we develop what would be considered submission, where our horse learns just not to argue with us. That does not address if our horse is experiencing pain or has physiological issues or even mental or emotional issues. It does not address whether our horse understands what the answer is, can do what we're asking them to do, understands how to find answers. There's such a complexity of reasons for our horse to know, to say no to us, that just that power over model of training will completely exclude and disregard as a naughty horse. And that's why we have so many horses that are just written off as naughty or bad, when we can really consider that behavior is just an emotional reaction to us that is escalated. We can start to say, okay, why is my horse having a negative emotional reaction to my ask? And we can start troubleshooting. On our First You Know Harm podcast, episode 34, we go through our training philosophy for troubleshooting problem behaviors, where we are going to go into how to troubleshoot and coach out those difficult behaviors that may be making our horse scary with how they behave and respond to us. So our key learning outcome for this stage of our groundwork is to be able to have a place of relaxation that we can come back to as a reset, so that our horse is learning from a relaxed mind instead of a fearful mind. When our horses are learning from a fearful mind, then basically, that's just no good. But there are plenty of reasons why it's unhelpful. It's a different area of the brain to the learning part of their brain, so they become reactive in how they respond. They don't know how to seek answers. They kind of just stumble across the right answers, and then when you go to train something new into them, they it's like training from scratch again. Whereas if we start with our next step, which is cue training, then we are giving our horses a set of skills to find answers so that we can start a language with our horses, which makes training aids and cues super easy. So when you're doing your cue training, it is super simple. The hard part is the previous step with the mental relaxation and the emotional coaching. The cue training is easy. Guide the behavior, mark the behavior, reinforce the behavior. How you choose to do that is completely up to you and your horse's personality, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with. But what you want to know is, does your horse understand how to find answers? Are you actually, if you're using pressure release, are you actually releasing the pressure to mark the behavior so that your horse knows to do it? Like that's the behavior that you want. How are you reinforcing them to want to do it again? How do you motivate them to stay engaged, connected, and consenting in your ask? Does your horse know how to seek the release of pressure? Do they even know that the pressure is going to go away when they get the right behavior? Are you actually releasing the pressure when they give the right behavior, or are you just trying to control them with pressure? Are you using your cueing as words to communicate, or are you using it to try and control them? So when we're trying to control our horse with our aids, that is basically when we are the least in control of our horse. We want to have emotional self-regulation and connection first, so that then when it comes to being in the saddle, now we're just extending that communication into bit pressure and leg aids. Does your horse know how to find the answer to bit pressure and to leg aids? In one of our YouTube trainings, Who Cut the Brakes, we talk about why 2-rein bit pressure is the worst way to train a halt transition, and we talk about how we need to cue in the word follow. Particularly, we want to do this on the ground first before we get in the saddle, but then once we're in the saddle, how we are going to ask our horse to follow rein pressure first to create a soft acceptance of our hands and to be able to ride our horses as lightly as we can. Once we have follow, then we have an ability to use 2 reins as pressure. If they are resisting a single rein aid to turn, then of course they're going to resist 2 rein pressure. The next thing that we're looking at is muscle conditioning. So quite often if we have a very athletic horse, we try to progress and scale the training scale before our horse is ready. We need to take some time to develop straightness and balance before we progress into the next level of training. Our horses are going to compensate and drop out of the movement in their places of weakness. So they may twist the pelvis, rotate the pelvis, lean into one shoulder more than the other. And it's really important that we, instead of pushing into the next exercise with a crooked horse, we spend some time working on what we're working on to straighten them out and then move into the next exercise. So from introducing a new exercise, we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks of coordination. So this is where we're going to start seeing our horses be able to coordinate the movement. The first time you do something that your horse has never done before, it is going to be messy because they cannot coordinate it and they have no balance in it. So it generally is that 6 to 8 week period where we start to see them being able to coordinate and balance in a movement. 3 to 4 months is where we start to see the muscles building. Initially, they're going to get tight first. So we're going to see the tightening of the muscles as they get stronger at that 3 to 4 month mark. And then at the 6 to 12 month mark, we're hopefully going to see all of those muscles soften and balance out as the environmental stress that we've created affects their posture and how they carry themselves. So that's what we're doing when we're training, is we're creating an environmental stress on our horse's body that they are adapting to. If that environmental stress is not enhancing their posture and their posture stacking, their core, their top line, then we'll see issues with soundness and crookedness through their body. We might see behavioral issues like bucking, rearing and bolting, and pain-related issues. Pain is always the first indication of a crooked body. This is our body's system of saying, hey, you need to address the fact that your muscles aren't holding the spine straight, because if you don't address it, you're going to bulge a disc. So that's what we're trying to do with our flat work and our dressage training, is we're trying to create a stronger postural alignment to carry us so that we can do hacking out and poles and grids and jumps, and we're looking at that cross training. If my horse's body is not adapting the way that I want it to at this point, I'm going to review with a trusted body worker. I'm probably going to review with a body worker anyway. We tend to have the chiro out twice a year and the osteo out 4 times a year, just to make sure that when the muscles are building, they are building correctly and the horses aren't cheating and compensating in different areas, which is typical of happening when we've got so many different riders riding the horses and beginners on the school horses. They are not going to use their posture and their postural stacking to their best ability if the riders are not expecting it of them. So your body's alignment has a big role on how well your horse is able to carry itself, and you can see this in the quality of frame that Fiddy gives in when I mess up my position. So what we're looking here is a pelvis that is rotated forward and down, which is putting me in front of the vertical, which is putting Fiddy on the forehand. And so then we're going to have a false frame because he is on the forehand. You can't have true top line engagement with a horse that is carrying itself on the forehand. Or we can have our chair position where our legs are in front of us, and so then we're not going to be able to get out of the saddle and balance properly, and so then we have a horse that is sucking back because we're balancing on their mouth instead of over our lower leg. So it's really important, firstly, what I coach my students to do is to be able to stand up, find their balance over their lower leg and squat without losing their balance. And you want to be able to do that again and again and again and again. 2.C for life. Holding from the hamstrings, not the inner thigh and the knee. So this is what I see a problem quite often in students, is where they've learnt to grip with the knee and the inner thigh. It is impossible for you to get your pelvis into a neutral position if you're using your inner thigh and your knee to hold on. You need to be engaging your glutes and your hamstrings to be able to pull your leg around the horse's belly to get your seat into neutral. We want our knees and our ankles to be soft and absorbing the movement, and we want our feet to be parallel to the ground. We want a neutral pelvis, not rotated forward, and the other thing that you can see is a seat that's too deep and so the rider is leaning back. And we want a neutral rib cage, so my shoulders like to round when I'm not paying attention, so you want to be able to pop the sternum up and pull your shoulder blades together without hollowing your lower back. So quite often when we start to try and pop the sternum, we will hollow the back, and when we try to soften the back, we will round the shoulders. So it's being able to find that neutral stacking of our own posture where we have a neutral pelvis and a neutral rib cage. You want to be able to find your balance in your heels in your belly button. So I do this with my students by getting them to find their balance on some bricks. And then the strength of your contact comes through your shoulder blades, not through your elbows and your hands. So your elbows want to be soft, following the horse's mouth, and then you're feeling and cueing through soft fingers that your horse can trust. So if that's something that you think you might need to work on, we have a couple of different options for you. You can work with us in our trainability, which is our foundational skills of emotional self-regulation and cue training. We talk about spookiness and other behaviors that we don't want in our horses, how we're going to shape out and coach out positive emotional responses to us. So work ethic, positive work ethic, consent, connection, establishing safe boundaries with our horses, confidence through curiosity, all of that is in here. And then how we start introducing words to our horse. Green to Self-Carriage is our lesson plans that we tier together and put together so that our horse is able to build its musculoskeletal system for sound, good posture with balance and straightness. And then we also have our riding part of it, where we talk about common postural mistakes, how to correct them so that we can improve our coordination, communication and cue training in the saddle. We want to have soft hands our horse can trust and balance over our lower leg. So if you're interested and you think you need more support, feel free to just message us, email us, reach out to us. Otherwise, I hope that has given you a clearer understanding of what holistic horsemanship looks like. We're looking at our horse's mental, emotional and physical body, as well as how they are responding to us, both in their emotional response to us, in how we ask with our body language, how they respond to us with our cue training for communication, developing those words, and then how our balance in the saddle and how our hands are going to affect the quality of training that our horse can do for us. Thanks for watching this training, and until next time, happy trails.